welcome to episode 105 of Tech Startup Podcast, or TSP Weekly. As per usual, I'm Amaris Gerson and you're Stephen Campbell, my co-host. We're doing a little pivot. We're going through one right now, so
Sure.
I decided to start.
Yep. How'd it feel?
Weird.
It's done now. You've started.
It's weird. I did it.
We're here.
Yeah. And we're here with Chris Reid from Sortable. Good morning, Chris.
Morning.
You're a little tired? You did it. Well work. Good work.
Stephen.
Good morning.
It's
If
awkward.
I say your name a few times, I won't forget it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So, Chris, you
Amaris.
just flew in from overseas.
I'm not overseas.
Trying to make it sound really dramatic. You had a
I'm
late
sure we
flight
crossed
last
a
night.
few lakes, but
Yeah.
Austin, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us this morning on the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what is
Yeah.
Sortable
What is Sortable? It's an excellent question.
for 6 a.m. or whatever the heck it is?
Sortable helps publishers make more money off their ads. So if you have a website and you have ads on it, then you would be a prospective customer of Sortable.
So
Okay.
almost everyone then.
Most people, yes.
That's awesome.
It's a big customer base then.
Yeah, it's a big market.
So how long has Sortable been around for?
So that's an interesting question as well, of course, although you knew that.
Yep.
So we got into helping publishers with their ads because we used to be a publisher. And so my last company, SnapSort, was a publishing business. We had about 20 plus owned and operated vertical focused review sites. So car reviews, game reviews for gamers, these kinds of things. And so we built that business. We sold it in 2012.
Okay.
And I ended up buying it back in 2014, November 2014, and then launched Sortable sort of at the same time. So pivoted the business right as I bought back all the sites.
Great. And where were you at the time? I mean, what location were you at when you bought back and started Sortable, essentially?
Oh yeah, so we were in Velocity.
Okay.
So yeah, we moved into Velocity in, I guess, almost right away, probably in, November, December 2014.
Okay.
And we're filming today in your office. You've taken over a sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Formerly a Tapanaki sushi restaurant. I was corrected this morning.
Tapanaki.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Tapanaki grills are where the sales pit is now.
Awesome.
We were going to leave them there just to keep the salespeople motivated, put them on top. And
You make a sale, you get something to eat? Is that how it
Or
works?
Or
you
we-
don't make a sale and you light on fire.
yeah,
Ooh, yeah, that's the motivation.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
But you didn't do that.
we didn't do that.
Because you're not like that.
The board wouldn't let me.
It's fair. Good choice.
Darn
But it
bored.
is still very much a sushi restaurant, but now also very much an office. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you guys have grown. What's the size of the company now that we're housing?
We're about 40 people now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And rapidly growing.
Yeah, so we have a lot of open positions, so if you're...
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that later.
If you're looking for a job. That's awesome. So how was that growth coming out of Velocity and into this space? What was that like? Was that like a graduation yay, or was that terrifying that you're going in out on your own, having to pay the bills for rent now? You guys were cash positive at the time, I know, but...
Yeah, no, it was time to leave. I think when you're in Velocity, it's really nice to be around a lot of other entrepreneurs and to sort of borrow culture. But as you grow bigger and bigger, you start to have your own culture, and you end up talking less and less to all the other people in the space, and so it just becomes time for you to leave.
And how's your role changed from sort of leaving Velocity to, as you look back on that time? Are you pretty much doing the same stuff, or are you... you tweaked
I
your
am.
role a
I'm
little
trying
bit?
to not, but I am. I think when we first started, there was 3 of us, so I was. I think you end up being the catch-all, right? So, excuse me, as the CEO or as a business founder, whatever you want to call it, you end up wanting to protect everyone else from everything else. So then you can just enumerate things, whether it's doing the books or ordering the lunches, whatever it is.
Whatever comes up, yeah.
Whatever comes up, as long as people are building product and coding, then I was just doing everything else. And so as we grow, I try and do less things.
It's good. That's hard for a lot of founders to sort of let go of that. Is that also hard for you?
No.
Okay, good.
I remember speaking to Dan Latondra from Igloo, and he talked about it was really hard, but I'm so glad that I found the people to run my company because it's one person can't do it, right? So that was an interesting sort of look at, he had felt that he had found the key people to do all the day-to-day stuff from the product and coding to picking up the lunches. So.
Yeah, I think you become, it's a great feeling when you see things getting done and getting done really well, and knowing that there's great people around you, and that's just, you can't build a company with one person.
Not for very long, right?
You can try. It doesn't work well.
No, it doesn't.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what sort of helped get you to this point? I mean, you talked about Velocity, but was there other mentors that sort of helped build your knowledge of how to run a company or motivated you to do that? You've talked about you've had a board of directors here that I'm sure sort of helps guide that, but what about in those early stages?
Yes. So I think a big influence is definitely the people around you, and so it's really useful to see other entrepreneurs at varying stages. And so I think in this region we've been fortunate. We've had, obviously Research in Motion was a huge success. They dominated a global market. They were number one, and they did it all here. And so to see $1 billion business in the region is helpful, and to see the Vidyards and the Magnets and Exonify, Kick. If you can kind of go through Aaron, ClearPath, you go through all these great startups locally that have been at it for longer than we have. That kind of sets some inspirational tone. It gives you something to strive for, and as a competitive person, it gives you someone to want to beat, right? And not in like a mean way, just in like here's a bar. Okay, can I do that too? And we're all competitors, right? And so I think it's really healthy for the ecosystem, and so that pushes me a lot. Then of course you have mentors. So on the board, I have a great board. Carol Lehman's on the board, so she's the CEO of Exonify, and she's a great friend and a really helpful mentor. And there's a lot of people like that. Ted Hastings, who originally mentored me at Snapsword and was the CEO of Rebellion, who ended up buying us. Was helpful, very helpful in other respects. So you sort of, I think it's useful to just touch and know a lot of other people.
Sounds creepy, but we'll just carry on. Yeah.
I know. I'm saying
I usually do that, Chris. So thank you. I appreciate that.
But to have support from other people in the community is what you mean. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm envisioning a great golf tournament with all the local startups, and I don't know if there's any golf happening, but golf cart racing and drunkenness.
That happens. There's a bunch of those.
Yeah.
You just don't get invited.
I probably because I'm not a good golfer, I'll tell you what. And I'm not running a big company, yeah. So it's interesting, the competition that you feel, and that motivates you. It's interesting here locally with the other startups. How do you think the mentors are rewarded? Do you just write them a letter to say thanks for helping me out, or is it your success they're feeding from, or why are they doing it?
I think they do it for a lot of reasons. I mean, I know that when I talk to entrepreneurs or give talks or try and help, it's just something I feel like you want to do. And I was like, when I was starting out, a lot of people helped me before I really felt like they took a risk helping me and believing. And so I think you just feel the need to sort of pay it forward. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of them do it to pay it forward. I think it's interesting also to and helpful to talk to a lot of different businesses and help them solve challenges, because it exposes you to a broader range of industries and problem sets and challenges, and you also benefit from the entrepreneur's approaches. And so I think the mentors, I think they're learning as well as helping people learn.
Yeah, that's a great point, because often we sort of brush over it and you think that the mentor is the genie or the answers person, and they're not. They get in and they fight with you to help you progress through some of those struggles, and they have experience in some areas, obviously. But really.
So a little bit more about Sortable, because we kind of you did your pitch about what Sortable is, but we didn't really expand on a little bit more about the business. But how did you realize that it was going to be a success? You're still working on that. I mean, you're 40 people, but I would say you're a couple years in.
Yeah.
So
how do we know it was going to be a success?
Customers. That's what I want you to talk about. Not label your customers, but know that you have sort of a market validation on that.
Yeah. So I think the way I knew it was going to be successful, or the way my initial hunch, right?
Yeah.
So you always have some sort of intuition that something will be successful, was we would go to conferences as publishers, and we would talk to other publishers who would, who are now our target market, and I knew what they would have to do to sort of solve this problem internally, and I could see that there's just no way they could do it, because there's a systemic lack of tools, technology, and talent for them to solve this. And so it was kind of like every publisher in the world is going to go hire a big engineering team, or someone's going to build a tool. And so the one approach of the million, or the 100,000 publishers each hiring 20 engineers, well, the math there is pretty bad.
Yep.
And also organizationally, I could tell that they weren't the organization who would ultimately handle this is viewed as a cost center in the organization, and so even if they wanted to, it would take a huge mind shift with all the organizations, irrespective of publisher size, to digest that additional cost burden, to say, hey, you're going to have to spend another $2 to $3 million a year on top of what you're already spending, which would again only really make sense for really large publishers, and they still couldn't do it because they couldn't get the talent, they couldn't.
So the space that you fit in is that you're essentially their engineering team. You're offering them a tool that they don't have to worry about.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It's like exactly. We end up being like an engineering team building all the stuff they would have built, except we build it once and we provide it to all the publishers. So that was like the initial hunch, and that still rings true. And the more and more we invest and grow the product, the more true that becomes. And we still don't see really any publishers making the investments. And so,
it's a good sign.
It's a good sign, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's talk about sort of our 3x3 section, where we talk about wins, losses, and glimpses of the future.
So what are some things that were successes for Sortable?
Scoring this cool office.
This office has been great, yeah. Don Zare is one of our investors, and the Zare Group has this whole 5-acre, section, and they're planning a big development. But in the meantime, before the wrecking ball shows up, he's been really generous in providing us space at a reasonable cost, and so that. That's kind of like a big win to have like your sort of first home base, which is nice.
Graduating out of Velocity and landing in a place you get to decorate or not. I mean, decorate. Yeah, you had a party here.
We did, and it's a little bare bones, but we like it. The sushi restaurant did a good job. Why would we?
That's fair.
That's very zen.
So what are some other wins? Did you maybe land when you landed your first customer? Do you remember what that was like?
I think a big win for us has been just that we've been really fortunate in getting market traction really early, and I think, you know what, just to kick it all off, the first big win was really that the way we started the business. So we started the business by buying back the old one,
Yeah.
which gave us cash flow from day one. And that's very abnormal, and that lets you, when you have a renewable resource of cash, so you have recurring revenue from day one, that's really helpful in terms of how you view the business and how you can invest. And it also, you're also not subject to having to raise money. And so
Right.
that really helps you think about things a little differently. And then I'd say the other big win was just that we got product market fit really fast, and we got customer traction really early and at significant scale, right? Like we've scaled our revenue just at a crazy rate. And so
Those are two huge advantages when you don't have to worry about capital at the beginning, and you don't have to worry about customer acquisition because you're getting traction, and they're, that's a big advantage because a lot of companies are spending so much time figuring those two things out and so much energy there, right?
yeah, no, we're super fortunate to have money and customers.
That's a nice thing.
It's a fair thing to say.
I think those are good wins. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about challenges?
Yeah.
What's been really hard for you guys? You're like, God, like every time this is.
Well, we are looking for the most talented engineers.
So that's a common challenge. You're struggling to sort of find the talent in this community that's all fighting for the same talent.
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for, we have a constant, probably like everyone else, we just have multiple open recs for engineers and
Yep.
software developers. So that is probably the largest challenge.
That's fair. Is there anything else that has been sort of a challenge? Maybe a pivot in the early days, or I guess the fact that you started another company and then sold that company, but then bought it back. That's a bit of a challenge it must have been at the beginning.
It was a challenge to buy the business back, because essentially you're going to investors and saying, I'm going to buy back this business and then ignore it and launch a new business that's completely unproven with the money from the other business.
Come on, let's go. Come on, everyone.
You hear this every day, right? This is a common investment
Yeah, that's
thesis.
fair.
And so, of course, it's not. And so that was difficult to raise money against that kind of an idea. But fortunately, we had investors who believed. So
Fair.
Really cool.
Anything else you want to throw in as a challenge or a fail or a?
yeah, I mean, we fail all the time. We're failing all over ourselves. But
As long as you're learning from it.
yeah, I mean, you try and keep them small.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's pretty healthy.
We're failing all over ourselves. It reminds me of yesterday for me and this afternoon for me. I've got a lot of challenges, and
Yeah.
once it doesn't work out, but you got to get there, right? And then you're like, next.
Well, and that's the thing with a startup is that you have to be able to turn around quickly once you've messed up on something or you learned a lesson. You got to be able to flip that around and make it work. You can't be like a big company and not learn anything.
Yeah, the agility is
Yeah.
something that's really important.
So I'm sure.
So
that's what
let's
you're
talk about the future on our 3x3. We talked about wins and losses. What we're growing, we're hiring, obviously. What's the future look like?
What's the time frame?
Whatever you want. You
Yeah.
throw on a time frame and we'll work
What
with
is
it.
what are you looking at? Are you looking at a 10-year now? Are you looking at a 5-year? Are you looking at a 10 million? Are you looking at a number for sales?
Oh.
Like Dan
I
talked
was
about
like years.
100
10
million.
million years. Wow.
What's wrong with you?
It made sense to me. I don't know.
Wow, you just blew my mind.
Thanks.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out what happens in 10
Yeah, where's
million years from
Sortable
now.
in 10 million years? Mars? Are we Neptune? Or what's happening?
Well, on that note, so I feel like it's really hard to look out even 5 years.
Right.
And so, a year is sufficient for me. And when I look out a year, so stepping back, when I look out more than a year, it's more like it's more of a theme, and the theme is how do we help publishers, right?
Okay.
So that's sort of like that's the generic statement that can sort of give us guideposts. As everything's swirling around us, we always want to come back to how do we help publishers. And right now we're very much focused on helping them make more money. Maybe that's not always where we're going to stay focused, or maybe that's not, we can expand what we do for them outside of revenue, but right now that's where we're focused. And so tactically, the next year is how do we really help publishers make more money, and so then there's product, right? So there's the product to fulfill on that sort of tactical goal, and then there's how far we think, like how successful we think we can be. So that's like revenue targets, right? So I'd say by the end of 2017, we're hoping to hit maybe.
It's dangerous to throw a number out there.
I know.
Do it.
It's okay. I mean, I don't think we do enough of that. Like, I think it's
setting goals and.
Yeah, we're pretty shy. So I'm going to say over 100 million ARR.
Should we go tell the sales team right now?
Yeah, you can go tell them.
I'll go break the news.
Yeah.
Any other sort of big goals for the future in terms of, you said you're not going to be in this space forever because there's going to be a wrecking ball. Do you have any sort of goals for where you want to end up in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to just. I wish there was a building beside the park, like a giant building.
Victoria Park?
Well, either that or Waterloo.
The boathouse is a little small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't really work either.
Yeah.
But no, we can probably get to 85 here, and then there's some overflow space. Like, for instance, there's the. Yes, we have a lovely sushi restaurant, but the pole dancing place. Just
There's a pole dancing place?
Just became available?
Yeah, just became available.
Huh.
So.
Perfect.
Wow. That's some
Throw
expansion.
the sales team in there, maybe?
Yeah. We actually talked about recording this morning on your roof, so you could probably put a couple desks up there if you needed to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Co-ops.
There you
Perfect
go.
for the
Yeah,
roof.
co-ops. That's right. Yeah, that'd be perfect. So that's the 3x3. We've talked about the wins, the losses, and the future. Now let's talk about our startup crush. Who do you see here locally that you think is doing a good job?
Doesn't even have to be locally. It just, I mean, you are a startup and you have grown from being quite small, and you know that companies like BlackBerry who turn into this massive company. So we would just sort of want to hear, who do you think is going to get there, or you think is really impressing you right now in the startup community, whether that's here or elsewhere?
I mean, there's a lot of impressive companies locally. I have a good friend, John Green. He's in Toronto. He has a company called Care Guide, and I think they're doing a really good job.
What's Care Guide? Can
Yeah,
you
what
give
do
us
they
their 30-second pitch?
Or
Or 5-second pitch?
So they are, if you're looking for a babysitter or a nanny or any kind of care, right? Elder care, they're like a matchmaking service.
Okay.
Oh, neat.
They also handle all the payroll complexities. And they're also, if you run a daycare and you need to find qualified staff for your daycare, they'll matchmake on that too. And so they're really focused around the care industry. And so they're just interesting. I mean, anyway, I like them a lot. They're a small but fast-growing company that a lot of people haven't heard of.
I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to go look them up.
Do they do pet sitting?
It's a different kind of care.
It is a different kind. It's very,
I believe they have a site for
Oh.
pet
Yeah?
sitters. Yeah.
There you go.
yeah, because we had to do something. We went away, and
Yeah.
we have a dog.
Dude, I'm right here. I'll take your dog.
Yeah, we should talk then. He'd love to hang out with you. You go. What about you, Amaris? Do you have a startup crusher this week that you're thinking about?
I don't. I can probably come up with. Whoa, Inksmith. That was the company I
Yes.
tried to remember a little while ago.
Yep.
They are a 3D printing company. I got an email from Jeremy the other day. They want to talk to us, but
Cool.
they originally started. I met Jeremy at a recruitment event for Communitech, and he had nothing. He had like Ziploc bags and like just a piece of paper as his sign. I was like, dude,
Quite a
what are you
booth.
doing
What
here?
were the Ziploc bags for?
He was doing 3D printing filament, and so he had like bags of the filament. That
Okay.
was his booth. But to see how he's come from there to where he is now, they're doing basically a full 3D printing kind of, I don't know, he'll talk to us, but they do a full 3D printing offering. I don't know, not just filaments, but it's also the actual printing and
Yeah,
other
when we
things.
talked to him last week or two, we saw him in Velocity Garage.
Yeah,
he was pivoting too, so
Yeah,
he
he's working on
he
some
was like,
stuff.
I got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So
Yeah, so I kind of like just the fact that I saw him so early and so fresh that I now see that he's doing pretty well. He's in Velocity. He's got a couple people on his team.
really neat.
So that's mine. What
Yeah.
do you got?
I got Georgette Packaging.
Oh, I feel like you've done them before.
Sarah Land Street. Well, they've been on the podcast.
Yeah.
They haven't been a Startup Crush, though, but
Oh,
they're
okay.
now in the sales mode. So we hear the bells and the gongs and the cheers and stuff. So
Oh.
I really like what they're doing. They're doing packaging. She came from sort of a bakery packaging background, and they're doing really cool boxes and
Boxes
and
for
stuff
like,
that.
macaroons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They always have really cool Instagram
Yeah,
pictures and
yeah.
stuff like that. So
seen
yeah,
it.
so they're in sales
All right,
mode
cool.
and doing well.
Cool.
So
All right, that's our startup crushes.
that's it. We did it.
So how do we hear more about Sortable? How do we stay in touch with Sortable? And
You can.
that's when you tell us your website and Twitter. And your
Okay. Where's Brendan? Yeah, you can go to sortable.com or follow us on Twitter at Sortable.
You're on
We're on
LinkedIn.
Instagram,
You're on Instagram.
LinkedIn. Yeah, we have a blog. We have a dev blog and a ad industry focused blog. So you can follow either of those.
Great. All
Awesome.
right. That helps.
That is. We're talking to Christie Digital next week, I believe.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's in my calendar.
I hope so.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah.
All right.
You want to wrap us out?
Sure. Well, that's it for episode 105. We'll be back with episode 106. Apparently, that's Christie Digital.
Yep, hope so.
From myself, Amaris Gerson, and Stephen Campbell, and Chris Reid. Thanks for watching and listening.
We'll see you next week.